Greetings. What's up? Hotep. How's everybody doing? My name is Ra. I'm broadcasting on behalf of 13signsastrology.com. Doing this video on a inquiry that I got. And a very interesting inquiry. Actually, I got it twice, believe it or not, within the last week or so. And I'm like, wow, I guess a lot of people need to know about this information or whatever. But this is actually something, before I go into this, I give out information totally free here via YouTube. So, but I do want to say that this subject that I'm dealing with, I do expound on in depth when you take the alien course that I offer. I do offer a course on aliens, and just kind of want to throw that out there because a lot of people out there now are getting into the alien thing, and I offer a course to help individuals understand exactly how the alien thing fits into our history, exactly what it means for the present, and exactly what it means for the future. And this course is actually important because of the fact that we are now going into this shift or whatever. So, I mean, knowing this information was actually taught, what I'm saying, through different texts and scriptures and the ancient tablets and things like that. But now that we're going through this shift, this information needs to be made public and needs to be taught public. So, in my videos, I do a lot of teaching and a lot of just informing people, actually, believe it or not, on extraterrestrial phenomenon or whatever. So, but those of you that are interested in learning more about these type of things, just from a historical research point of view, definitely hit the site up and check me out on the alien courses or whatever. But this video is on the hollow earth theory. The hollow earth and actually the hollow moon theory, believe it or not. But it's really on the hollow moon theory. I'm going to do a separate video on the hollow earth theory. Now, the hollow moon theory was what, a lot of the scientists want to call it a theory. But believe it or not, it's not a theory. It's not a theory. This is something that was documented again in the ancient scriptures. For those that are into studying the ancient scriptures, you'll see that, this information was documented. And it's something that the ancients totally knew about as far as the hollow moon theory, how it became hollow, exactly what processes and what transitions were what transitions basically that occurred or whatever that would cause the moon to become hollow. So I'm going to go into that here. Now, we're going to take this information from so those of you know where I'm getting this information from. According to the ancient Sumerians and some of the other ancients, the ancient Ethiopians, and you deal with a lot of the ancient texts, and like West Africa, you start dealing with a lot of the shamans and those spiritual gurus that were passed down a lot of information about the history of the earth from mouth to ear from, their predecessors and those that came before them. This is where a lot of the alien and all this extraterrestrial information comes from. It comes from the ancients. And the ancients and the indigenous were here before your modern day scientists. So those of you that like to dismiss this type of information as far as like the alien information and things like that, because you're saying science doesn't validate it. For one thing, what you need to realize is this: the ancients were here before your modern day scientists, and people had all these machines and equipment and all this type of stuff. So they were here on this planet before, and if they were able to build pyramids that line up with star constellations precisely and exactly, and build monuments and different ancient megaliths and all these different structures that line up with star constellations precisely, then what makes you think that they didn't know about the stars and they didn't know about the origins of the moon and the origins of the earth and the origins of different beings that came here? What makes you think that this could be totally false if you've seen the structures that they built? So you might want to get the knowledge and information that they have or whatever before you dismiss it. So this is where I get a lot of my research from. I go to the ancient sources. I've had teachers that showed me how to go and to deal with the ancients and to go get information from the ancient sources. And that's basically where I get my information from. When it comes to the whole alien thing. So a lot of this isn't available in your normal Egyptology type of doctrine, because like when you deal with Egyptology and stuff like that, or, in the typical Mayan history and all that, you're getting like a watered down version of what the ancients really taught. Because for one thing, most of this information like alchemy, magic and things like that were not taught publicly to the public. It wasn't taught to the public publicly. So you had to be initiated in a mystery school to get this type of information. And you had the ancient Tibetan mystery school. You had the ancient Egyptian mystery school. You had mystery schools all over this planet. So we know that they had mystery schools. So what makes you think that they didn't have exclusive knowledge that they taught within these mystery schools. Like when you read about alchemy and stuff like that, I'm going to do a video on what I know about alchemy, but most people, they look at alchemy as like very basic, a mundane topic or whatever, where they just look at it like turning base metals into gold. But it's way more to alchemy than that. Like alchemy is a very deep science. Alchemy and magic are two different things. They're similar, but they're two different things. And it's one thing to be a magician, but it's another thing to be an alchemist. So I just kind of want to point that out because alchemy is something that they taught in the mystery schools as well. So not really trying to get too far off point here, but I kind of wanted to say that because, you know what I'm saying, a lot of people leave these comments and stuff like that, like this stuff is just way far out. And I'm not saying that you have to believe anything. I'm saying you listen to this channel as A, for information, and I always tell you to go do your own research, and for B, entertainment. Some people listen to this for entertainment, and I don't mind that because entertainment can be education. And education can be entertainment. So, I mean, we used to call it back in the days, we called it edutainment. You know what I'm saying? You educate somebody while entertaining them. So, no, you don't have to believe in this. You know what I'm saying? Be naive in this. You know what I'm saying? You just listen to this as another perspective, as another outlook. So, before you get all uptight, you know what I'm saying, and leave all these weird comments and stuff, just look at it like it's entertainment, folks. And you have the right to your comment. That's why I let all the comments stay up there. You have a right to leave your comments, too. So I'm not saying don't leave comments. If you feel like you don't agree with something, whatever, leave it. It's totally fine. Like I said, I'll just put the information out there. And, you know, it's up to you what you do with it. And, you know, you can ask me questions, and I'll try my best to get back to you. I get a lot of emails. You can send inquiries or whatever, and I'll do my best to explain things. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get into this topic. So the moon, actually, this is how it is the ancients taught it. We had originally, Earth had an original moon that gravitated around it or revolved around the Earth or whatever you want to call it. We had an original moon. And this was when Earth was called Tiamat. And Tiamat had an original moon that based on a certain event that took place with Nibiru, this moon was actually pushed out further out into the solar system. And the name of this moon actually right now is called an asteroid now. And it's called Ceres. Ceres, C-E-R-E-S. Now Ceres used to be our moon. That used to be the Earth's moon at one time before something happened with Nibiru. And basically Nibiru came into our atmosphere and a series of accidents took place in this atmosphere, and the Earth's moon got pushed out to past Pluto, out there where Pluto is and beyond. And this is where Ceres is now. So a lot of people, and actually in this same accident, Pluto was in a different position and Pluto was pushed out as well too. And I cover this, like I said, in depth in my private classes. But so when you start talking about the moon and, you know what I'm saying, the way it is now, it's a long story behind that, but I'll make it very short and precise here because this is a YouTube video. Nibiru came into our atmosphere, some things happened, it pushed Ceres out further out into the atmosphere. But before Ceres was there, believe it or not, Earth did not have a moon. Earth did not have a moon at one point. At one point, the Earth was not tilted. Like right now, the Earth is tilted at 23 1/3 degrees on its axis. But at one point, the Earth was upright. It was not tilted. And what this means is that there were no seasons. There were no seasons. And this would even change the way that you look at astrology and all of these types of things, because the influences here on Earth were totally different when the Earth wasn't tilted. Now, when the Earth wasn't tilted, this was a time when beings lived in the water. This is when the Earth was called Tiamat. And it's always been a watery planet. It's still a watery planet, but at this time, it was even more so a watery planet, meaning there was less land and more water during this time, before the Earth got tilted. So what happened was there was different beings that came here. Some beings from Meldeck lived here and made this their second home. You had some beings from Pluto that came here and made this their second home. And one particular being, who later on his name was Lunar. That was his name later on. He was the one responsible for creating the first moon, the one I told you about, that was called Ceres. And he created this first moon. It's called Ceres now. He created this first moon. And basically he was a very powerful person. He was from Pluto. And those of you that know anything about Pluto, Pluto gets its name from plutonium, because plutonium is a element that is very dominant on Pluto. So he was from Pluto. He was the god of Pluto. He came here. He wanted to control basically this whole solar system. He was very power hungry, and this was a time when this was a time like before the quarantine or whatever. So this is like way before any type of Earth quarantine. So this was a totally different environment here. You had different extraterrestrial beings that reigned here, and this is before modern humans or Homo sapiens and how we look. This is like we're talking like over. Actually, we're talking like close to trillions of years here, over trillions of years here when this took place. So no, I'm sorry. Millions of years, excuse me, I shouldn't have said trillions. I was thinking about the universe. We're talking millions of years here when this particular event, these events begin to transpire. So the exact time I give in my courses or whatever, the exact time period kind of escapes me right now, but it's millions of years though, put it that way. It's way before any Homo sapiens were walking the earth, way before the Anunnaki came here and did experiments. This is before all of that, just to kind of give you a time reference of when this was going on. So time never was when it was not humans, where it was not beings and like Homo sapien type of entities or whatever, humanoid type of entities. Now, they weren't human like me and you, but there's always been ETs or whatever you want to call them, but basically humanoid type of individuals here on this planet. Now, this planet was in the fourth dimension at the time, so of course these beings had a superior form of technology, a superior way of thinking, and a superior way of doing things during this time, because this is before the quarantine, before the advent of the third dimension. So you had Lunar. He was basically power hungry, and what he did was he was from Pluto. He lived here. He wanted to rule the whole solar system at the time, and the way it was, so he went to the council, the Galactic Federation, to petition, and they shot him down, of course, and said, no, you're not going to rule the whole solar system. So he got pissed. Very power hungry individual. So what he decided he was going to do was he was going to blow up. He was going to blow up the whole Earth at the time, who was called Tiamat. It was not called Earth at the time. He decided he was going to blow up Tiamat. And a lot of you have heard this story from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he really didn't. He didn't go as in depth with the story, but he got this information from certain ancient texts, same sources that everybody gets this stuff from or whatever. So, but Elijah Muhammad didn't go deep into it, but he called him the moon god, and he didn't really go into the whole specifics of it. So I'm giving you more specifics, but this story is available via the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the teachings of the original Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So the moon guy got disgruntled. It was angry. He couldn't rule over the whole universe. So he took a whole bunch of plutonium and he packed the earth. The earth was always hollow. And there was a tube. Basically, it's like a tube in the earth. He packed this tube in the earth full of plutonium, and boom, kaboom, he basically blew up this a certain portion of this planet, which caused the earth to tilt. And this is what caused the first moon, or Sirius, because he wasn't successful in blowing up the earth. He only blew a chunk of it off. So this is why the earth tilts to this day, and this is when the seasons begin to change and the poles and all of that stuff comes into play. And this is why the earth travels on a wobble, because of a war god or a warrior type of being named Lunar, who got disgruntled and blew up the earth. And this is how the ancients taught it. Now, you must remember that just because you can't understand stuff like this, like, well, who has this type of technology? Just because you can't understand things like this, you can't just dismiss it, because you're new on the planet. All of you guys. A lot of humans out here, like, we're pretty much new on this planet. So you don't know what went down on this planet. This planet is very old. So stop letting your linear mind block you out from truths that are really more of a circle. It's not linear type of information here. This is like dealing with like some high level 360-degree type of information, which is a circle. So it's not linear. It's not a straight line. Just want to kind of throw that out there. So blew up that part of the earth. It became the moon. He moved to that part, which is called the moon, and took control of that part of the moon. And this is why you're wondering why I'm bringing all this up in reference to the hollow moon theory. This is why the moon is hollow, because the moon comes from the earth. That moon came from the earth. And actually, believe it or not, this new moon that we have, which I'll go into at the end of this video, comes from the earth as well. So that moon came from the earth, and that's why it was a hollow tube in it, because it was a chunk. It was blown from apart from the earth. So even Sirius has a hollow tube in it. So he moved there or whatever, and he reigned there, and he set up civilization there on that moon called Sirius. And eventually, later on, that's when the Anunnaki came and they had their little crash in the universe that I told you guys about, where they came into the solar system, excuse me, and they had a crash that took place with a lot of planets were a part of this. Uranus, Neptune took part in this. Tiamat took part in this, and Meldick or Vulcan took part of this. The planet that many of you are known as Vulcan took part in this. And this all plays into the same story because it was Nibiru, and based on the crash that happened on Nibiru was the reason why that particular moon was pushed out further into the solar system, and the reason why Pluto, which was a lot closer, it was like within the area of Saturn. Pluto at one time was inside of the rotation of Saturn, got pushed further out. That's the reason why these things happen, because of Nibiru and the crash. Now, a lot of people have asked me this question: if they're so intelligent and these Anunnaki have such advance and they could build a planet-sized ship, how come they didn't know about these planets? Why would they crash into them? That just doesn't make any sense. The Anunnaki, just like humans, just like you, anybody else, made mistakes. Humans have sent out rocket ships, and they have blown up because they didn't know about the ring of fire that surrounds the Earth, and they didn't know you had to go through a ring of fire to get out of the atmosphere of the Earth. So they've had rocket ships that have blown up, and believe it or not, they use melanin in these rocket ships now so that they won't blow up. See, a lot of people didn't know that. Yeah, they use melanin in there, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah, they use melanin to construct these rocket ships now. So they make mistakes in their explorations to learn how to do certain things. That's why it's called an experiment. Anytime you say an experiment, we know that the Anunnaki were scientists, right? And they're not the highest beings. See, it's like people don't realize that. There's beings that are higher than the Anunnaki. So, I mean, as far as like intelligence, they're not the most intelligent beings, and they experimented just like me and you. They're actually a lot like me and you, the Anunnaki are. And they experimented and they made mistakes and they did things. So they're more advanced now and they learned, but this was the first time they navigated here in this area, in this solar system. So it was a crash that took place. That's why they crashed. Yeah, they were able to construct a planet-sized ship. You know what I'm saying? And they use metal ships. So that's how you know that they use metal even in their construction of ships. So this is how you know they couldn't have been too advanced, because they were so advanced, like a lot of researchers point out, how come they weren't flying in starships? And I'll do a video on that soon. There's different kind of crafts. There's a lot of different kind of crafts. The Anunnaki used metal crafts, so they couldn't have been too advanced. So I just kind of want to throw that out there. So yeah, they crashed, and they caused basically that part of the moon to... So once that happened or whatever, and the crash happened, they caused Ceres to be pushed out. Its gravitational pull got pushed out past Pluto, and it became an asteroid as you know it today. That's Ceres, Ceres. And then what happened after that was that they eventually created a new moon for the Earth, which was another portion of the chunk of the Earth, because they crashed into Tiamat during this crash or whatever. And once they crashed into Tiamat, they constructed a new moon based on this crash, and this is what created the Grand Canyon and all of that. And the new moon that was constructed is the current moon that we have now. So that was the second moon. So Tiamat had an original moon to kind of recap everything that revolved around it, but it was pushed out. That moon was pushed out based on gravity and certain influences that come into the solar system that didn't belong here, which was Nibiru at the time, and this caused the solar system to be reshifted. And things got restricted and restructured during that time. So, like I said, they created a new moon that came from the Earth based on a crash that took place to create this new moon or whatever. And this is when they began. And a lot of people say that this new moon that they created when they crashed into Tiamat, it was more of a necessary. It wasn't really like an accident when they crashed into Tiamat. Because I can't really go into all of it here, but I talk about it in my alien courses. But if you know the story, basically what happened was that by them crashing, like when they almost crashed into Uranus, and then when they shifted and then moved or whatever, ended up crashing into Vulcan. When they crashed into Vulcan, and that's why Vulcan is not a part of our solar system anymore, it got pushed out, but it's still out there. It's called the Lost Planet. Vulcan is still out there, and they know about it. And there's two NASAs, so you got to keep that in mind. There's not one, there's two NASAs, and NASA knows these things. And they're not going to tell you. You guys are waiting on people to come on television and tell you these things. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So there's two NASAs. They know about this information I'm talking about. They know about the crashes. They know the moon. Both moons came from the Earth. They knew about it. They knew Tiamat had an original moon that was pushed out, and now it's called Ceres. They know about all that. So, but what people teach, like as far as when you learn the ancient stories or whatever, a lot of people say that when Nibiru came and it it caused some ships that got caught up into the gravitational pull in Nibiru. These ships were like ships that came from Meldeck, and they were trying to attack Nibiru because they felt Nibiru violated their free will by attacking their planet by crashing into them. And the Meldeckians or the Vulcans got mad. They were a group of reptilians. If you want to know how they looked, Vulcans, most of them are reptilian looking. Some of them look different, but a lot of them, the dominant ones, lived in the waters and they were reptilian looking. So they got mad and came at Nibiru. Nibiru caught these ships up in his gravitational pull because it has a defense mechanism, a shield, and it caught these ships up into its gravitational pull, and it flung the ships towards Tiamat. And then when it done that, it was 4 ships caught up in the gravitational pull of Nibiru. And I'm not going to go into everything, the whole story here, but one of the ships was responsible for the creation of this new moon that you see now. Because when it flung that ship towards the earth, it took off a chunk of the earth, and that chunk became your new moon. And it did that because they had to do something with the ship. So it really wasn't an accident. They used that ship to create the new moon now, which created the pull that, because it wouldn't be no life here on this planet as far as human life without that new moon. This is why humans were able to exist. So many people say, this is my point, many people were saying that the Anunnaki created this new moon as a means and a method and as an experiment because they were getting ready to seed the planet with this new gene or this new genetics. And it was a part of the Adama projects, which was the creation of humans or life or the slaves that they needed. So they used this event that took place as an accident, and they basically turned it into an opportunity. This is basically what they did because they were scientists now, so they don't believe in wasting. So instead of them taking the ships and just throwing them off in the middle of nowhere and having it crash in some random place, they made it crash into the earth. Those particular ships that tried to attack them from Meldeck, they made those ships crash into the earth. And there was several things that took place when those ships crashed into the earth. One was your northern lights came from that. What you would call the northern lights or whatever came from that crash. The Grand Canyon came from that crash, and the moon came from that crash, the current moon. So this is where the current moon came from or comes from. And those particular beings or whatever, the Anunnaki, eventually came back later on because this was the beginning of the seeding of the planet. See, this brought new life to Tiamat. New life was here. So they came back later on, and that's when they partook in experiments to create human beings, millions of years later. But it all started off with that crash. So eventually they and in that crash they shortened the revolution of Nibiru. They shortened it because Nibiru used to come within our solar system, but now Nibiru only comes close to our solar system. It doesn't come within our solar system anymore. So that's basically how that went down or whatever. So the reason why the moon is hollow is because it came from the earth. And now you have, in current days and times, you have different beings that are living within the moon, just like they live within the earth. You have beings, and beings live within many different planets. They don't just live within the moon. That's why they can't find a lot of life on certain planets, is because a lot of the beings live within certain planets. But our moon definitely came from the earth, and this is why it's hollow. And you know what I'm saying? This is why the Grand Canyon is here, and a lot of other things is based on certain experiments and things that went bad here in the universe. And this is why the earth is tilted and looks a certain way and is positioned a certain way, because of your friends, the Anunnaki, that came here on their exploration trip, trying to find gold and trying to basically be these gods of the universe and to create new life and to create slaves. And all of this stuff kind of goes hand in hand. And I just kind of want to throw that out there. So this is basically how the moon became hollow. I hope this video helps. For more information and for more enlightening videos, you can visit my website at 13signsastrology.com, or if you want to ask any questions, shoot me an email, 13signsastrology@gmail.com. I'll leave you in peace.